Hi, Professor Charlie Evans here. A few words this morning on Vissarion Belinskii. This will support your Belinskii paragraph assignment for History 241. Belinskii, 1811 to 1848, was one of the most important Russian intellectual figures of the 1840s, the marvelous decade in Russia. He was a literary critic, and it's very rare that uh, a literary critic is, to put it bluntly, really important in intellectual life developments in a country. Writers, authors, poets, artists. It's easy for you to understand the importance of those in intellectual life of a country. But a literary critic, one who reads the output of writers and then criticizes it and points out problems or inferences in that work, that's a little different. But Belinskii was absolutely important because he believed that in the repressive regime of Russia of the 1840s, the only way that you could really discuss political, moral, ethical ideas was in writing. And really hidden within the writing, you had to understand the deeper meaning of what was actually the written word. You had to read behind the lines, between the lines, to understand what was really being said by the author. And so Belinskii thought that authors could really use their talent as writers to really get across progressive ideas, the search for truth to the Russian people. And the Russian people, were really talking about a really small element of the Russian people, educated society, who could read and understand what was going on. And so Belinskii's role was to explain to the reading public what the writer was really saying and trying to discover. And so, for example, he was really instrumental in pointing out the value of the early works of Dostoevsky, Turgenev, and even Nikolai Gogol, and explaining to people why it was really important that they understand what was being said in these words, in these works, and what could be understood to be important for Russia in these works. Um, he worked for two different literary magazines in the 1840s. Notes of the Fatherland, and then Sovremennik, the contemporary, and he became really famous and well known. Um, his most important work is what we're reading here, the letter to Nikolai Gogol. Belinskii had greeted Gogol as one of the great stars of the Russian literary world, with Overcoat, Dead Souls, as exposing the hypocrisy of Russian society. And here we have the copy of the letter to Gogol that you're going to be reading for your assignment here. This is one of the most important literary intellectual documents of Russian history in the 19th century. Um, Belinskii really criticized Gogol and really examined Gogol's most recent work and really condemned Gogol's correspondence with the Friends as turning his back on the the perceived role of the writer in. I'm not going to tell you what that perceived role is because that's something that you have to do as you read the document. But for example, the document itself, the letter was circulated amongst educated society. Dostoevsky helped circulate it. Dostoevsky read it several times in public gatherings, and this is one of the reasons why Dostoevsky himself was arrested, condemned to death, and only spared death at the last moment and exiled to Siberia. Belinskii himself was probably on the verge of being arrested when he died of consumption tuberculosis, and that spared him the arrest. Um, and so, as you read the document, what I'm trying to get you to understand is that this was the start of a very specific idea of the role of the writer in society, how literature should function in the society, um, what the educated public should be trying to do and understand in a society when they were only a really small element of the population. And so Belinskii had a very fixed conception of what the duty of a writer was in a situation in which that writer was writing in or under an authoritarian regime. Okay,